Hi, I'm Siege from the Puma podcast team. If you like listening to this show and others created by our team, you can help us keep making them through our Puma Patak tip jar. Our goal is to get 100 of you, our friends, to make a contribution and show your support for the journalism and storytelling that we do. We're happy to keep making shows that you can listen to for free, but making them isn't free, so we appreciate any support you send our way. All you need to do is to go to pumapodcast.com where you'll find a link to the Puma Patak tip jar.
Hello, I'm Regina Lay, the senior news editor of Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka News, Balitang Thinking, Hindi Breaking. In this episode,
yung batas na yan, pinakinabangan lang yan ng people who should be watched precisely by the press.
a local court convicts journalist Frank Cimatu of cyber libel on the same day that Senator Risa Ontiveros files a bill proposing to decriminalize the very act. So this case goes way back to 2017, and believe it or not, it was over a 2-sentence Facebook post. The Baguio-based journalist Frank Cimatu wrote on his own page, and I quote, "Agri-Sec got rich by 21M in 6 months. Bird flu pa more," end quote. The agriculture secretary at that time was Manny Piñol, who subsequently filed the case against Cimatu. The Quezon City Regional Trial Court noted that the post, though made on a private page, was viewable by the public and had generated at least 210 reactions.
Yes, he is a journalist. He can also argue press freedom and so on. But at the end of the day, I mean, you could argue a personal post which opens that gateway and sets everybody on the same slippery slope.
For example, the issue of malice in libel, it's one of the few, if not the only law we have in the revised penal code that presumes you to be guilty. And you have to prove your innocence or your lack of malice, to be more exact about it.
Okay, so dalawang...
Because you're presumed to be malicious until you prove yourself to be not malicious.
That was Puma Podcast founder Robbie Alampay discussing the issue with his One News co-host Ed Lingao on the show The Chiefs. They're right. The court assumed that Cimatu acted with malice. The decision reads, quote-unquote, "This is a clear indication of the intention of the accused to malign Piñol, no matter the cost, and is clearly proof of malice." The National Union of Journalists of the Philippines called it an assault on press freedom. It said, "A powerful politician such as Piñol crying foul over a Facebook post of a community journalist is ironic in a supposed democratic country." In response, Piñol posted in his own Facebook that it's, quote, "not just a legal victory and vindication for me, but a very important lesson on responsible and accountable journalism." But was it journalism, though? That's the big question. This case has reignited the age-old debate over libel. Various media groups rallied behind Cimatu and called for its decriminalization. Carlos Conde of Human Rights Watch wrote, "No person should spend a day in jail for expressing an opinion or reporting the news." And here's Vergel Santos, trustee of the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility.
You know, until there is an act, a law, scrapping that law, walang mangyayari yan. Gagamitin at gagamitin din. And given the very real problem of corruption on every level of government, including the courts, you can imagine that this law can be used against news people by foul means. And by harassing news people, that by itself, it defeats the constitutional purpose of having the press as watchdog on the powers that be. So, hindi pinapakinabangan talaga.
In fact, on the same day, Senator Risa Ontiveros filed Senate Bill 1593, or the Decriminalization of Libel Act, which would repeal several articles of the revised penal code referring to libel. It would also repeal the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012. This is actually something that neophyte Senator Raffy Tulfo had been promising since the campaign period. Here's the former broadcaster talking about it on the One News show The Chiefs back in May.
First, i-decriminalize ko yung libel. Yan kasi masakit sa ulo yan. Naging harassment yan para sa mga media workers. Ginagamit yan pangharas ng mga politiko, ng mga balasibues, ng mga taga-gobyerno na ayaw nilang sila ay napupuna. Kaya ginagamit nila yung panakot, yung bang ididimanda sa korte kung minsan sa malayong probinsya para maharastan talaga yung media workers. So that's why I have to decriminalize that. I have to pass a bill na para ma-decriminalize that.
But in the end, Senator Ontiveros beat him to it. Her bill also referenced how the law has been abused by private citizens. The court dockets, for instance, are clogged with cases of restaurants suing patrons for leaving unfavorable reviews. Which brings us back to Robbie's point earlier about it being a slippery slope. Should private social media posts be litigated? Where do we draw the line? Unfortunately, with this Congress, experts aren't hopeful that change will happen. And there's the problem with having Senator Ontiveros write the bill. She's part of a very, very small minority in the upper chamber. Even Senator Tulfo himself says he knows it will be hard to pass in a Senate stacked with allies of President Marcos.
That's the reason why gusto kong mapunta doon sa majority. Kasi pag nasa majority ka, then you can get the cooperation of many of your colleagues para maisulong nga yung batas na gustong maisulong. So kasi kung nandun ka sa minority, maharang ka nga nung iba na hindi papayag. Teka muna, mas gusto namin yung meron kaming ginagamit na sandata para pangharas. Sa halimbawa kami ay nasagasaan ng sino media worker.
Frank Zimato is now facing jail time of between 6 months and 1 day to as much as 5 years, 5 months, and 11 days. He also has to pay Piñol 300,000 pesos in moral damages. The lower court's decision can be appealed, but advocates say this likely won't be the last such case. The NUJP has counted at least 28 libel or cyber libel cases against journalists just in the last 6 years, including that, of course, of Rappler founder Maria Ressa. And so Virgel Santos of CMFR says it isn't enough to just decriminalize libel.
We will never probably gain much headway so long as the issue will have to be resolved in Congress, And these are people who are potential target of press criticism and therefore could always use a law like that to deploy against the media. So it will be difficult, of course. Although, if you ask me, it should have been that it's not only decriminalization. If you ask me, I'd prefer that it be scrapped altogether.
And that was today's episode of Teka Teka. Again, I'm Regina Lay, the senior news editor of Puma Podcast. This episode was edited by Mark Casillan and produced by Kat Ventura. If you like this episode, share it with a friend or two. And of course, don't forget to follow Teka Teka and Puma Podcast wherever you listen. Thanks for listening.